But I am really pleased to introduce Marius Igitangaza Ngabo. Thank you, John. Thank you. Thank you. With his presentation, The Memorial Lane, Connecting the Past, Present, and Future, a cultural heritage map of Rwanda. And just before I turn the podium over to him, I'd also just like to recognize that Marius is in fact one of Dorna's students, and Dorna has done an incredible job in bringing new student members into the Alliance, so I think we should at least give her a round of applause for that. So both Mona and Ahmad who are here, I think both of you have attended conferences in the past in the same capacity, so Dorna, thank you for your efforts. And Marius, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Before starting, I'd like to sincerely thank also AHLP for selecting me as one of the scholarship recipients. More than that, I'm deeply honored to be part of such a wonderful and inspiring community. So thank you so much, AHLP. And I'm also grateful to my thesis advisor, Dr. Donna, who supported me through my research journey and encouraged me to participate in this conference. Thank you so much, Donna. So to start, I'd like to give you a short brief as a background of my research. From a personal perspective, I'd like to say that the world is currently in the period where most of the countries are in need of what I would call a cultural renaissance. So why is that? This is especially evident in developing countries, speaking particularly for the context of my own country where I originally come from. I have observed what I'll describe as an overwhelming influence, or rather a strong impact of Western civilization on the youth in these nations. As a result, they strive to adopt Western lifestyles, often emulating public figures from these cultures. However, on the other hand, it poses a serious concern. It gradually leads to a loss of identity. People begin to forget where they come from, the core values of their nations, and the uniqueness of their cultural heritage. So the special motivation for me doing this was, actually I wanted to contribute to reminding especially young Rwandans of the importance of preserving their country's history, culture, as it helps us understand who we are, where we come from, where we are now, and serves as a foundation for where we aim to go in the future. Diving into the presentation then, I'm Marius Igitangaza Ngabo, and I recently graduated in Ball State with a Masters of Landscape Architecture, and I came from Rwanda, which is located in East Central Africa, with its rich cultural heritage and wonderful and hardworking people. So Rwanda is usually described as a land of 1,000 hills because of its interlocking rolling hills spread across almost the whole country. At my early age, I often heard elders say that when persons don't know where they come from, it becomes very hard for them to know where they are going. So I thought they shared these words not just for sharing, but to open our eyes, to help us understand the history of our country, to know its roots, recognize how far we've come, and be inspired to work hard toward a better future. But then, how can I relate the story of Rwanda to its natural landscape? I use this graphic to illustrate how the topography of Rwanda reflects its history through peaks and valleys, symbolizing the rises and the falls of the country. So the graph represents the key periods starting from the founding, where Rwanda was founded, its expansion, the pre-colonization, the colonization period, which ended with an independence in 1962, the divisions that led to the genocide against the Tutsi in 1994, the liberation, the resilience, and the ongoing journey of growth and development. So from the literature review, I ended up classifying cultural heritage into 5 main categories: arts and crafts, natural elements, museums, politics, and genocide memorials. So by politics, I mean like the chronological, the chronology of administrative leads, or the people who have lead the country. And from an architectural perspective, it appeared that genocide memorials receive a greater recognition and attention given their presence across nearly all the regions of the country. So this is because the genocide almost happened in all over the country. So in every region we have a genocide memorial. So let's now dive briefly into the journey of Rwanda. So the journey starts from the former King's Palace at Nyanza. It's in the southern province, which holds deep significance in the foundation and identity of Rwanda, as it was the royal residence of the Rwandan monarchy. Most of the kings lived here. A symbol of centralized power, culture, and unity before the colonial influence. So as you can see, this was like the first King's Palace. You can see the architectural, like the traditional architecture, and some decorative arts, Rwandan patterns, and woven fabrics as some of the key significant aspects of Rwandan culture. However, when the colonizers arrived in Rwanda, mostly Belgians, they didn't just bring positive systems. They actively deepened divisions among the people, which eventually led to the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. The 1994 genocide against the Tutsi was one of the most horrific tragedies of the 20th century, where over 1 million people lost their lives in just 100 days. Entire families were wiped out, children were orphaned, women were raped and brutally killed. Places of refuge, like churches, became sites of mass slaughter. Following those hard moments, Rwandans undertook a strong path of resilience through reconciliation, reuniting, putting their hands together, and rebuilding the country. So this is one of the examples of the communal activities, which called Umuganda. It happened on the last Saturdays of every month, where people used to gather and do some works, either for cleaning, constructing for the poor, or victims of the genocide, like different significant activities that, of course, go into align with the theme or the motto of the country for rebuilding and reuniting people. So this is one of the results of those communal activities. This is Kigali Vision City. It's an exemplary outcome of those activities that shows the possibility of a country of rebuilding and reaching a better future when people come together, stand united after tragedy, and work toward a common goal. And the government is strongly committed to the preservation and transmission of the whole memory to young generations, so that those tragedies won't happen anywhere else, but also for the sake of the legacy, or like the transmission of the legacy, and helping young people to know where their country comes from. So after exploring Rwanda's history briefly, I was curious about how cultural sites are nationally recognized. Which ones attract the most visitors, which are less attended, and I used the statistical data showing that the natural elements, especially national parks, led in visitors' interests, representing 45%, and then there comes the genocide memorials that follows with 25%. Art and political history, often displayed only into certain museums or genocide memorials, come last in terms of recognition, yet they still preserve important aspects of the country's past. But why shaping the narratives of Rwanda? So I've realized the disconnection of youth from the cultural heritage due to modernization and rapid development, which is eroding the traditional knowledge and practices. And some of those practices, as I try to visualize, they include like traditional dance, communal activities, culture troops, traditional dance as well, traditional drumming, some of the traditional events like the National Harvest Day and the gorilla naming ceremony, basket weaving, decorative painting as part of traditional arts and crafts, oral heritage, which is usually visualized into the spoken word performances, oral poetry, and events. So those are like some significant cultural aspects that I would mention, but there is also the commemoration events with the theme of Remember, Unite, and Rebuild that help young to engage with the country's history of remembrance, fostering an active participation in the nation's ongoing journey of recovery and rebuilding. So the research question actually for this whole study was, how would a cultural heritage map of Rwanda look, with the sub-questions? What are the tangible and intangible elements that define Rwanda's cultural heritage? And the second is, what elements are most recognized nationally, and which ones remain underrepresented? And among the methods I used in this research, there are documentation, ethnographic surveys, where I was trying to study different cultures in Rwanda, case studies, using some of the existing museums and different cultural sites, participatory approach, like reaching out to people, and simulation, because I've been using GIS, so I've been trying different alternatives in GIS. So after that, I would like to go back a little bit to understand what's the cultural heritage from the UNESCO. So UNESCO defines the cultural heritage broadly as the legacy of physical artifacts and intangible attributes of a group or a society that are inherited from the past generations, maintained in the present, and bestowed for the benefit of the future generation. So this definition kind of demonstrate how essential it is to transmit the cultural heritage and history to young generation, because it's not only for like elders or our parents, but they also have to transmit to us and young generation, even for the future generation. So as I mentioned earlier, I classified the cultural heritage in Rwanda into 5 elements: museums, political, memorials, natural, and art. And briefly, I would say that Rwanda has like 5 recorded or recognized sites from UNESCO, like 4 genocide memorials: Gisozi and Murambi, Bisesero and Yamata. And it also has, like in Rwanda, I can say that we have like many more cultural heritage sites, but those are the most recognized by UNESCO so far. And among intangible heritage, I can say that they include like some ceremony, as mentioned, political history from monarchy to presidency. And within the natural heritage features, I can say that we have some national parks, lakes, rivers, scenic landscapes, and the genocide memorials as well. Going into depth for each, starting with the politics or political, which I described as the chronology of events, I would say that it shows the path of Rwanda from where it was founded, the pre-colonial, to the colonial, which started in 1885 after the Berlin Conference. And the colonial, Rwanda have been like a German colony from that time till the end of the First World War, where the Belgians undertook. And then there has been like some divisions that rose, which led to the genocide in 1994. And then there was like some fleeing where Rwanda were trying to find the refuge in the surrounding countries. And then they come back and they are now rebuilding the country, which is that path of resilience. So among the genocide memorials, I used these main four, the ones which are recognized by the UNESCO. So these sites actually represent more than 200 places of worship and public places of resistance in Rwanda where the massacres were committed, and encourage a reflection and reconciliation while playing an educational role in promoting a culture of peace and dialogue. As I said, these are Bisesero Genocide Memorial, Murambi, Nyamata, and Kigali Genocide Memorials. Among the museums, we have different museums like the Campaign Against the Genocide, the Colonial Museums, and the Museum of Environment, Ethnographic Museum, and the King's Palace Museum. So altogether, they come from the ancient artifacts to modern art, reveal the rich and unique essence of nationals' culture and heritage. Within the art, we have like different kinds of arts, like the fashion, the woven fabrics, the Rwandan patterns, art museum and galleries, traditional events like the National Harvest Day, and all together are seen in everything from the board, fashion and intricate handicraft to traditional and vernacular architecture and rhythmic music. And as I said, the natural elements include the national parks, like the National Volcanoes Park, natural water bodies like Lake Kivu, and the physical landforms like different rocks and caves and trenches. After that, I tried to make like a cultural heritage map graphically, trying to show the specific location like into different zones of those different cultural heritage maps. But I didn't stop there, because I developed a story map starting with an exploration of the cultural heritage sites where it shows the location of each of those cultural heritage sites. And then I've also included a short inventory about those and an analysis as well, but also the timeline showing when those cultural heritage sites were implemented or started. So here is a QR code where you can, that can lead you to the map. It's a story map made from GIS online, and it shows, it starts with the exploration of those sites, showing the location of each, and once you're visiting it, you can get the brief information about each of those culture sites, and you can also visit their specific websites. And after that, there is a little bit of an inventory where I was trying to demonstrate all those different information I started with, like the classification of those cultural heritage sites, and a little bit of analysis as well, like what are the criteria I used in classifying those cultural heritage elements in Rwanda, including the outdoor spaces, accessibility, how are they accessible, how do they use the outdoor spaces, what content is displayed in those, what's the age group mostly viewed in those cultural heritage, and how do they display like the evolution of the history of Rwanda. And I've also touched on the typologies, different typologies, like the traditional cultural heritage sites, but also the contemporary kind of architecture or cultural heritage sites. And these are those different categories I used in classifying those cultural heritage sites, like accessibility. But it was not easy because in Rwanda we don't have that much information of GIS that can help you to visualize this effectively, but I tried with available resources. And then what kind of content displayed in those cultural heritage sites, like the colonial museums, the King's Palace, all those different forms of significant aspect of culture and heritage in Rwanda. The genocide memorials that displayed different people who lost their lives, the people who stopped the genocide, all those kind of information. But you can also visit some of the genocide memorials and have the virtual tour onto this website. So this map actually helped me to put everything together, because in Rwanda right now we don't have anything that can help people to understand Rwanda, go like into these different elements and get the clear view of Rwanda. And I think it's something which is significant. Yes. So after that, this is like the timeline that I mentioned earlier. And to conclude, I would like to say the way forward. So I want to actually present this map and the overall research to some key institutions like the Ministry of Youth and Arts, the Rwandan Cultural Heritage Academy, so that they can give me some input or feedback that can help me to refine it, and then rather promote the map for the public use. So thank you so much.
Questions from here? Nancy?
Thank you for that. It seems like an enormous contribution to the country. I was wondering about the current state of tourism. Is there tourism from outside of the country? Is the government doing anything to encourage that? Or tourists coming from tourism?
Yeah, sure. Actually, the country has already started some different policies of enhancing the tourism sector. Like maybe some of you have heard about Visit Rwanda. So this is a kind of maybe a strategy that brings in or like raise awareness of Rwanda, and it brings in many foreign, especially investors, and I think they're working together with some of the most famous soccer teams, for example, in Europe, just to raise awareness, and it kind of open or give a clear perspective of Rwanda, and this brings in different tourists, especially from Europe and US as well.
Can I just jump in here? Anyone who watches English Premier League, John, I know you're one of those people, sees that there's a Rwanda promo on the sidelines.
Yes.
I just wanted you to put your QR code back up so we can see what
Yes.
stories happen.
Yes, sure. Yes.
Go ahead, John.
Just out of curiosity, I mean, it's obviously a broad picture you're trying to include on this exercise. Would you say it's most important for people within Rwanda to understand Rwanda? Was it for people outside, or were you trying to both?
Yeah, I was actually trying to meet both, like maybe starting with the youth in Rwanda, because most of the youth have this Western influence, like the influence of Western countries, and I want them to know, to be aware of the culture and heritage of their country. But also it helps like foreign people to understand Rwanda, because most of the people know about Rwanda, like every time many people heard about Rwanda, they think about genocide, but I think it's more than the genocide. It has a rich culture and heritage, and I wanted them to have a clear view of Rwanda, especially with the culture and heritage. Yeah.
Your question?
You cited commemorative landscapes and genocide memorials. I was wondering what the distinction between these were. Are they already connected or
So two commemorative landscapes, I was mostly leading toward the outdoor spaces, because I've realized that mostly like as I mentioned in architectural perspectives, because most of our genocide memorials are kind of the building and the structures, so they kind of don't explore their outdoor spaces, and I wanted to see how maybe this can come into life and they can use the outdoor spaces. Because I've been looking into different memorials, like the Vietnam Memorial, the 9/11 Memorial, and I see the impact of landscapes into this aspect of commemoration. Yeah. Thank you so much as well.
More questions for Marius? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. Great work. Also, very minor thing. I'm curious of that. Although the UNESCO cultural heritage is getting more and more inclusive, have you came across locations that what you think is cultural heritage or culture doesn't recognize by UNESCO or vice versa? Because UNESCO is such a Eurocentric establishment.
Okay, I can say that maybe different forms of art, like those aspects that that shows the uniqueness of Rwanda, like different forms of art, different, like maybe including the woven fabrics or items, that shows the particularity of Rwanda. And maybe it's because of the awareness of those different aspects, but I think it's on the way, because like recently I've heard that Inore or the culture troops have been recognized, though maybe it's not yet official, but it's coming because people are now understanding and knowing better Rwanda, and I think it's gonna impact the awareness and recognition of those different aspects of culture and heritage. But I think the cultural heritage englobes all different aspects like tradition, values, even the language, art, the genocide memorials, all aspects that shows how unique is a country.
John, last question.
Yes. Are there any elements of cooperation with neighboring states that would impact the developments that you're speaking of. I think especially of Tanzania and Uganda, other states that have had sometimes difficult relations, other times many reasons for cooperation.
Yeah, sure. I think the only challenge in those countries is that most of the countries are kind of confidential. But starting from Rwanda, as mentioned, I'd like to maybe present this to some of the ministry that are concerned, like the Ministry of Youth and Art, and this can maybe help me to also reach to those neighboring countries. And I think after that I can have a clear and well-developed research that can help me to tell a good story of Rwanda. Yeah, but it's really not easy to collaborate with neighboring countries, especially with some of the challenges or the problems that those countries have. But yeah, I can try my best. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much.